Some matches announce themselves as classics before a single ball is struck. This one didn't. On paper, it looked routine. A 17th seed against a player ranked in the 70s, a round of 64 fixture that most casual fans would scroll straight past. But by the time it was over, nobody was calling it routine anymore, because Eala didn't just win this match. She took it apart, piece by piece, until her opponent had nothing left to give. The opponent was Elena-Gabriela Ruse, a 28-year-old Romanian who had actually beaten Eala once before, back in 2024 at the US Open qualifiers, grinding out a 3-set win that went the distance. There was history here, unfinished business, and for one game it looked like Ruse might be ready to pick up right where she left off 2 years earlier, breaking Eala's serve immediately to open the match, drawing first blood, sending a ripple of uncertainty through anyone who remembered how that last meeting ended. That ripple didn't last long. What happened next wasn't a gradual shift in momentum. It was a collapse, sudden, total, and one-sided in a way that even Eala herself probably didn't see coming when she walked onto the court. She reeled off 9 straight games. 9. Her lefty serve, always a little awkward for opponents to time, started landing exactly where Ruse couldn't get a racket on it. Her forehand, the shot that has quietly become one of the most feared strokes on the entire tour, found lines it had no business finding. Ruse wasn't just losing points. She looked like she was running out of answers in real time, chasing a rhythm that had already slipped completely out of reach. The first set ended 6-1, not a competitive scoreline, not even close, and Eala carried that same ruthless efficiency straight into the second set, breaking serve again, racing out to a 3-games-to-love lead before anyone in the crowd had even settled back into their seats after the changeover. This is the part of the story that deserves to be said plainly. Ruse simply couldn't handle it. Not because she wasn't a capable, experienced professional, she is. Not because she didn't have a plan coming in, she likely did. But because Eala, in this moment, on this court, was playing a level of tennis that very few players in the 70s of the world rankings are equipped to deal with. Every ball she sent back was a little too fast, a little too precise, a little too well placed. It's the kind of dominance that doesn't just win a set, it breaks an opponent's spirit before it ever breaks their record. But dominance on a tennis court can only ever tell half the story, because just as Eala was tightening her grip completely, something else started happening on the other side of the net, something that had nothing to do with tactics, nothing to do with skill, and everything to do with the human body finally reaching its limit.
There's a particular kind of despair that creeps into an athlete's face when their body betrays them before their opponent even has to finish the job. That's exactly the look that crossed Elena-Gabriela Ruse's face midway through the second set. After dropping the third game to fall further behind, Ruse called for a medical timeout. Trainers rushed to strap and tape her right foot, working quickly courtside while Ruse sat with the kind of grimace that told everyone watching this wasn't a minor tweak. It was real. And for a player already down a set and 3 games to a red-hot opponent, an injury timeout at that point in a match rarely signals a comeback. More often, it signals the beginning of the end. Still, she came back out. Play resumed. And then, almost as if the tournament itself wanted to add one final complication to an already dramatic night, the sky opened up. Lightning was spotted near the grounds. Officials made the call immediately. Suspend play. Right as Eala held a commanding 30-love lead in the 4th game, everything stopped. Players walked off, fans in the stands scrambled for cover, and thousands of viewers watching from the Philippines in the very early hours of Sunday morning were left staring at a frozen scoreboard, unsure whether this match would even finish that night. Here's the thing about rain delays when a player is already carrying an injury. They are never neutral. An hour might feel like nothing when your body is warm, loose, and running on adrenaline, but when you're already hurting and you're forced to sit still for 60 long minutes while officials wait for clearance, that same hour becomes an enemy. Muscles tighten, adrenaline fades, pain that felt manageable in the heat of competition suddenly feels a lot more real once the competition itself has paused. When the courts were finally declared safe and officials prepared to resume play, everyone assumed the match would simply continue from that frozen scoreline. Instead, the announcement came through that changed everything. Ruse would not be returning. She had made the difficult call to retire, her right foot simply unable to continue. For Eala, this meant advancing to the 3rd round in the strangest possible way, not through a final winning shot, not through a hard-fought final tame, but through a walkover handed to her by circumstances entirely outside her control. It's a strange kind of victory, real, official, fully valid, and yet incomplete in a way that leaves both players and everyone watching wondering what might have happened if the weather and the injury hadn't intervened. But if the ending felt unfinished on the scoreboard, what came next, in Eala's own reaction, told a much fuller story about who she is as both a competitor and a person.
Winning by retirement is an awkward kind of victory. There's no crowd eruption after a final ace, no walk to the net for a hard-earned handshake following a grueling final set.
just a scoreboard frozen mid-match and a winner left to process a result that doesn't quite feel like a finished story. Eala didn't try to dress it up as anything more than what it was. Speaking afterward, she didn't lean into the moment as a pure triumph. She didn't celebrate the dominant scoreline or highlight the 9 straight games that had put the match completely out of reach. Instead, her focus turned almost immediately to the player on the other side of the net. Reflecting on how it all ended, Eala admitted that a retirement isn't the way you ever want to end a match, wishing Ruse a speedy recovery and noting simply that injuries are never fun. Inquirer.net. Sit with that for a moment. Not gloating, not milking the highlight for a bigger headline. Genuine concern, offered instinctively, for the very opponent she just dismantled on the scoreboard. She carried that same tone into a later interview session as well, expressing that it felt unfortunate the two of them weren't able to finish the match, and that above everything else, her first thought was hoping for her opponent's fast recovery. Twice, in 2 separate moments, unprompted both times, the same instinct. Empathy before ego. It's worth asking why that detail matters so much in a story that's fundamentally about a dominant win. The answer is simple. It's easy to be gracious in defeat. It's much harder to stay grounded in the middle of your own hot streak when the results are stacking up in your favor and the temptation to bask in it is right there. Eala is 21 years old, riding one of the best stretches of her young career, 11 wins in her last 13 matches since Wimbledon. And yet her very first instinct after a dominant win was to check on the well-being of the player she'd just beaten. That combination, ruthless on the baseline, compassionate off it, is rare. And it's part of exactly why this story has resonated so quickly beyond just the tennis scoreline. Because underneath the numbers, underneath the 9 straight games and the 6-1, 3-0 dominance, there's a very human moment sitting at the center of it all. But sympathy for a fallen opponent doesn't pause the tournament, and almost immediately, attention shifted toward the far bigger question hanging over Eala's run. Who was waiting for her next?
If Ruse's retirement was the story that shocked everyone on Saturday night, the name waiting in the round of 32 is the story that's about to define the entire week. Amanda Anisimova, 9th seed, world number 10, and right now, one of the most dangerous ball strikers anywhere on the WTA Tour. Anisimova rolled into this matchup with a clean, controlled 6-2, 6-3 win over Turkish rising star Zeynep Sönmez, a result that wasn't just a routine advance, but a quiet warning shot to whoever she'd end up facing next. That opponent turned out to be Eala, and almost instantly, tennis fans and analysts alike recognized what kind of collision this was about to be. Picture the contrast in styles for a second. Eala thrives on unpredictability, that tricky lefty serve that so many opponents struggle to time cleanly, the sudden explosive forehand that can end a rally in a single shot, the ability to draw errors out of players who think they've settled into a comfortable rhythm against her. Anisimova, on the other hand, is raw, relentless power layered with increasing precision, a player who has spent the past year proving her ceiling might be among the very highest in the sport right now. When contrasting styles like that collide on a big stage, it rarely produces a dull afternoon. This isn't just a compelling stylistic matchup either, it carries real weight for where Eala's season is heading. Her run through this tournament has already pushed her rankings trajectory sharply upward, climbing to world number 18 in live standings. Along the way, she's already passed notable names: Ekaterina Alexandrova, eliminated in the round of 64, and Jasmine Paolini, who was forced to withdraw from the tournament entirely before her run even began due to injury. Eala now sits just 18 ranking points behind Sorana Cîrstea in 17th place, and Cîrstea, notably, is still alive in the draw, meaning if both players keep advancing, a quarterfinal meeting with direct rankings consequences is sitting right there on the horizon. Suddenly, this tournament isn't just about a dramatic Saturday night retirement anymore. It's about a young player whose entire season is compounding in real time, one result feeding directly into bigger stakes, one match away from a top 10 collision that could define how the rest of her year gets remembered. Ruse's retirement got Eala into this round, but Anisimova is the opponent who will actually determine how far this run goes.
It would be easy, lazy even, to look at this week and reduce it down to a single sentence. Eala advanced because her opponent got hurt. But that framing misses almost everything that actually matters here. 11 wins in 13 matches since Wimbledon isn't the kind of number a player stumbles into. That's a sustained, deliberate level of high performance, the sort of stretch that separates a promising young talent from a player who's genuinely arriving as a top-tier threat on tour. Cincinnati, a WTA 1000 event, one of the biggest tiers on the calendar outside the 4 Grand Slams, was always going to be the real test of whether that form could hold up against deeper, more dangerous fields. And through this first real hurdle, It didn't just hold up, it intensified. Look at what was actually happening before the injury and the weather ever intervened. Eala overcame an early break of serve, a moment that, against a lesser player, might have opened the door for exactly the kind of comeback Ruse pulled off in their first meeting back in 2024. Instead, Eala closed that door completely, ripping off 9 consecutive games and turning a nervy start into total one-sided control. That's not fortune. That's a player imposing her game with total conviction, regardless of how the first few points unfold. And then there's the shape of the draw itself, which has quietly been shifting in ways that matter. Paolini's early withdrawal, Alexandrova's exit. These aren't just footnotes buried in a results page. They're signs of opportunity opening up for a player riding the kind of form Eala currently has. Opportunity doesn't guarantee anything on its own. Plenty of players have had open draws and failed to capitalize. What separates this story is that Eala has been doing exactly that, capitalizing relentlessly, match after match. There's a layer of complexity worth acknowledging too. This wasn't a clean 3-set battle that Eala closed out point by point against a fully healthy opponent. The way it ended, weather delays, a medical timeout, and eventual retirement, adds a piece of unresolved tension to how this result gets remembered. Some will point to the dominant 6-1, 3-0 scoreline as proof enough. Others will always wonder what might have happened had Ruse, even while hurting, somehow found a way to fight back in a healthy body.